Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, showing you around the museum of interesting things, Johnny Hamburger. And this first segment is the shortest segment of the whole show, thanks to this new clock for the local shows here on KPRC. So I am going to use this first segment as a state of the geek union, let you know what's going on in at least my world of geekdom. And I'll use that point to ask you, or remind you, that you can let me know what's going on in your geek world always by visiting Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook. Type a message there. I'll see it. Email me, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. Geek Therapy Radio on Twitter. Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube. So, let's get you all caught up because it's kind of nuts. And Sarah is behind me. She's studying because she's way, way smarter than I am. But we have some news. She's a nerd. She's a geek. I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. And we thought last weekend, why don't we make this official? I asked Sarah to marry me last Sunday. What'd she say? Well, let's see what she said. Sarah, can you... I'm sorry, I didn't know I was going to do this. Can you give me the thing? Give me the precious? I'm making her get up. And I'll explain how I proposed here in a minute, but I just wanted to show everybody. She said yes. I might zoom in on it on YouTube, but she said yes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
She did say yes. She just verified. You heard it here. This
really said yes.
This bald nerd with the thick glasses and a gut that you may or may not be able to see if you're watching on YouTube. If I can get a pretty girl like Sarah, then there's pretty much no excuse for anybody. She just laughed at that. I don't think she's trying to be mean, but she's probably agreeing. Yeah, if I could get a girl like Sarah, then you know there's probably hope for all of you out there. So, a little story, since this is the shortest segment, a little story on how we met. First, we met, for those of you who don't know, we met at church. I was divorced, she was divorced, and I remember thinking, I was at church one Sunday when I came back, and I remember thinking, man, because I was on Tinder and Grindr. Wait, no, not Grindr. Strike that from the record.
What?
Grindr? No, but I was trying the online dating thing. I didn't go out on any dates. So anyways, I was just very disheartened by it all. I was still brokenhearted, to be honest. I mean, you don't just get over a divorce. You don't just move on the next day. It's impossible. So at some point, several months later, I knew it would be healthy for me to at least be looking, not for looking for anything serious, but just, you know, start keep being open to the possibility. So after being on online dating for a few months, I was getting disheartened, and I just remember thinking, man, I was like praying. I was like, God, why can't I just meet a nice girl like Sarah? And I said that for like 2 or 3 Sundays, and then I was finally up there behind the soundboard. I said, God, why? Seriously, why can't I meet a nice girl like Sarah? Then I got slapped in the back of the head by a big godly hand, and I heard a voice go, Sarah is a girl like Sarah. And I said, you know what? You're right. Sarah is a girl like Sarah. So, fast forward a few weeks, maybe a couple months, because I wanted to make sure that once she was on my radar, I wanted to make sure, like, are my feelings real? Like, just those initial first feelings, like, is this just a passing thing because she's nearby, or is it real? After I established that I did really have feelings for her, I didn't expect her to reciprocate, but after I established that my feelings at least were real enough for me to ask her out, I conned her into going out with me by asking her through a text, because it was 2016, 17, 16, first time. I just said, and this was kind of true. I said, Sarah, would you like to go to dinner with me one night? Nothing, just friends, nothing weird. And she responded immediately, that sounds wonderful! All caps, sounds great. All caps, exclamation points, like turd emojis and happy emojis and like angel emojis and all the emojis.
At all. That's quite a bit of an exaggeration.
Slightly less emojis, but she said it sounded great. So when I proposed last Sunday, we went back to the same spot in Galveston where we first opened our hearts to each other and bared our souls to each other. So I thought the most appropriate way to bare my soul again was to propose to her on the same spot. We'll be back in a minute. You know, maybe one of these anniversaries after we get married, I'll be baller status and I'll be able to get her an Audi from Audi Central Houston. Maybe an A4 or a Q5 or Q3 or all-electric e-tron. But when that day comes, I know where I will buy such a vehicle. Audi Central Houston. And first I'll go to AudiCentralHouston.com and peruse all the fuel-efficient vehicles, up to and including vehicles that don't even use gasoline, like the e-tron. At Audi Central Houston, when you go to Audi Central Houston, make sure you say hi to Danny Posey. He's the GM there. Tell him that Geek Therapy Radio sent you, because Audis are just the coolest cars on the road. By far, you can geek out about Audis the most. There's so much tech in there. They pack all that tech so sexily. So when you pick up your Audi, and I know you will, just make sure you start your Audi perusings at AudiCentralHouston.com. Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Geeks, there is no better place to be on a Friday or Saturday night, or even a Thursday afternoon for that matter, than Kung Fu Saloon right here at 5317 Washington Avenue. And let me tell you why. Great food, which is an understatement. I had a burger there last weekend. It blew my head off. It was amazing. My girlfriend had French fries, and she was mad at me at how many French fries I was taking. So the food, great beer, great drinks. And you know what the kicker is? You are surrounded by arcade games, and there are games there for everybody. I personally prefer Street Fighter 2. Step to me on Street Fighter 2 and you'll get served, like I've always told you. But there's also skee-ball. Skee-ball is fun. And Mario Kart. And if it strikes your fancy, karaoke. All of this can be found at Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. That's Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue, kungfusaloon.com. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. You're engaged. Off the market, ladies. Mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. And I know what a lot of you ladies are thinking. I don't care. Sarah's taking one for the team. You know what? I would agree with you, ladies. You don't know me the way... I didn't brush my teeth this morning. Sarah is very thrilled with that. I ran out the door, didn't brush my teeth. We're not going to get into all that.
Did you put deodorant on?
I did. I did put on deodorant before you got home. Today was a rush. I was pretty...
8:45 at night.
I was pretty ripe today. I will concede that. So that's what I'm saying, is Sarah is really, believe me, taking one for the team. So all you ladies out there, I'm not sure you're missing much. Regardless, I'm going to stop self-depreciating myself, because it's not real. I very much value my own life and existence, and I think I'm a catch. And if you need proof of that, ask my mom. She can verify. She can corroborate with evidence that I am a catch, despite being a little bit gross sometimes. I may or may not have started out Sarah's day with a rotten sewage smell in the bedroom. Oh, gosh. It's natural, Sarah.
Till death.
Till death. It's natural. do us part. One day you're going to smell that smell and I'm going to really be dead. Actually, I hope that doesn't happen. I've long since maintained that I hope Sarah dies first. And I know that sounds twisted, but I hope she dies first and then I die a day after, because I don't want her to feel lonely for even like 1 hour. So when we both die, when we're well into our 150s, I want her to go first, just before me, so she doesn't have to bear even a minute of a realization that I'm gone. And isn't that kind of morbidly sweet? I think so. Speaking of not morbidly sweet at all, I don't know if I've touched on the show before, that I used to. I need to double check on this. This shows how actively involved I am in this. I had quite a bit of Tesla stock at one time. When I say quite a bit, I mean, I don't know. I think at max I had 10 shares at one point. And my brother, who's now my financial advisor, is like, this was a few years ago, was like, get out of Tesla. And I tended to believe him. I was like, yeah, it's such a roller coaster having Tesla stock. And one of those reasons I have to be 100% honest is because Elon Musk is such a loose cannon. I don't think he should have been kicked out as CEO of Tesla, but what I'm getting at is this. The day Tesla stock, if you still own Tesla stock, it has been so shaky. And I am not giving stock advice at all right now. I'm not telling you to buy or sell Tesla stock. I'm just telling you my experience with it. I think I still have a couple shares just because I am morbidly curious about it. Since the fallout of the SEC charging Elon Musk with fraud, basically, that's exactly what they did. And they said one stipulation is you got to pay, what is it, $20 million of a fine or something like that? I think Jack is licking his genital area, which is not allowed right now. Anyways, I think he had to pay $20 million to the SEC or a fine or whatever, and then they asked him to be removed as chairman or CEO, chairman of Tesla. And when that news broke out, Tesla stock, quote unquote, surged. That's just because it started the day low, because they were wondering what SEC was going to do about Elon Musk. They said he has to pay a fine and he can't be a chairman of Tesla anymore. And the shot stock up. The reports that day, Tesla stock soars in wake of SEC ruling on Tesla or whatever. Long story short, even just today as I'm recording this, it is October 4th. It's Daniel SSS's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday as of recording this. It's Daniel S's birthday, October 4th. But as of today, Elon Musk got on Twitter again because adult human beings, no matter how successful you are, can still be children. And he was basically taunting the SEC and their decision and everything on Twitter. And what do you think happened to Tesla stock? How do you think his shareholders liked all of that? The answer is not one bit. So I kind of understand why, from a shareholder's perspective, you want a little bit more stability from the person leading the person at the helm. And again, this is such a fascinating exercise. I don't have a man crush on Elon Musk any more than I do of Donald Trump, but their Twitters and how they handle social media is fascinating, because guess what? Bill Gates isn't up on Twitter saying stupid stuff. Bill Gates seems to understand the negative potential that running your mouth on social media can have. Donald Trump doesn't understand that. Elon Musk certainly doesn't understand that. And I'm not saying Elon Musk is inherently evil or anything like that, or inherently stupid. Obviously, he's not stupid. But it just goes to show you why it's so fascinating, is that you can have the world on a platter. You can work your way up from nothing. In Elon Musk's case, he was one of the inventors of PayPal. He sold PayPal, took his few $100 million or whatever he got from that, reinvested it, turned it into different things, and now he's where he's at. He definitely did build his wealth from the ground up just by being smart. And starting off in the Commodore 64 programming little games. That's where he started. But you can get to the top And it's like no amount of gurus or spiritual healing or guidance or whatever can for some people counteract the effects of just being a little boy. Sarah calls me a little boy. I'm simultaneously an old man because I'm balding and fat and have big thick glasses, but a little boy because I like to drink chocolate milk every day.
And you have to be reminded to brush your teeth
And
and put deodorant on.
And she says I have to be reminded for basic hygiene things. That's
And to pick up your toys.
and to pick up my toys. I don't have toys. I have.
What is this?
That's an Xbox controller. That's not a toy.
It is a toy.
That is a tool. It's spelled different. So it makes me wonder about myself. What if Geek Therapy Radio just got so... It just took off. And Sarah's in the background, and maybe I'll boost up her voice. Do you think I'm going to handle things better than Donald Trump or Elon Musk? I don't have to boost her voice because she just made no comment at all.
I certainly hope so.
Sarah, I promise that I will save every penny I can. Once it starts rolling in, if it starts rolling in, I'm save it all because the bottom could fall out. What if I say a stupid tweet like? What if I say a stupid tweet like Ricky from Trailer Park Boys, and just say something like, "You can feed your kids all the candy in the world because those teeth are gonna fall out anyways." What if I tweeted that as actual parenting advice?
You have a good head on your shoulders.
See, but the thing is, I do, but I agree to a certain extent with what he said. Those teeth are going to be gone anyways. You might as well live it up because they're going to be gone. Now, a rational person who's already thought of this as I'm saying it thinks, well, that's really stupid, really, really stupid, just for the basic fact that you're going to get fat and get childhood diabetes and you're going to die before you're 12. So, yeah, I guess there's that. But it's just fascinating. See people reach the top and then see that they're still like the same little kid, same kind of teenager, same youthful ignorance is still there no matter what you achieve. Next segment, I'm going to be talking about Microsoft and how they're messing up. Stick around. There's one aspect of Elon Musk's life that I do a little bit envious of, and that is that he can afford as many Audi R8s as possible, as he wants. And if he wants an Audi R8, I would guide him to Audi Central Houston. And if he's not in Houston at the time, I'd say, Musk, why don't you peruse AudiCentralHouston.com? While you're at it, you can pick me up an A3. Get me an R8. Musk, if you're listening, go to AudiCentralHouston.com. Order me an R8, please. You can keep the Tesla. Order me an R8 at AudiCentralHouston.com. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, and I don't have a lot of time to waste in this segment because it's all predetermined, pre-timed radio segments. That's the way this works. Earlier in the week, I threw Apple under the bus for their ridiculous practices with consumers. They charge top dollar and then they put things out that are broken or that don't perform or don't give you what you're paying for, which is top dollar. That's what you're paying for these devices. So anybody who does that deserves to get thrown under the bus if they don't provide consumers what they want. So Microsoft, I am throwing you under every single tire of that bus now. This is unbiased, and it's not just to be fair because I threw Apple under the bus. It's because you too, Microsoft, are being stupid in the case of the Surfaces. So let's get into it. The Surface Go, I actually don't have much of a problem here, but get the 128 gigabyte model. That makes the most sense. It also has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it starts at $550. It does have USB-C, but it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3, which makes sense because the Pentium 4415Y is underpowered for anything you'd probably use Thunderbolt 3 for. But it at least has Type-C at $550. It's the cheapest Surface, but it has Type-C. That's going to be important going forward here. Let's move on. Oh, Microsoft. The Surface Pro 6 starts at $899 and goes up to about $2,300, $2,299. Comes with an i7. Likely a Whiskey Lake 8565U, 25 watts, 4 cores, 8 threads, up to 4.6 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD. Those are drool-worthy specs so far. But there's a catch. No matter what spec, and despite a more than adequate CPU choice, you don't get Thunderbolt 3. And you do not even get a USB-C port, which is mind-boggling. For paying a premium price up to $2,300, you don't even get the Type-C port that the Surface Go gets at $550. You get a full-size Type-A port. Okay, that's nice. I'm not arguing that, as long as you also have a Type-C on the same device. To my knowledge, not even the proprietary dock will support Thunderbolt 3. So, no baller status. You can't carry around your Surface Pro 6 all day long and then plug in your Thunderbolt 3 external GPU enclosure to game with. Can't do that, even though you spent $2,300. Microsoft, what are you thinking? That's unforgivable. Stupid, really. Moving on to the Surface Laptop 2, it starts at $999 and goes up to $2,199 because you only get up to 512 gigabyte solid-state drive. So it's the same specs as the Surface Pro 6, and you might be thinking, oh, well, it's a laptop. Surely we'll have Type-C and Thunderbolt. Nope, you are wrong. It is natural to think that a laptop would have Type-C and Thunderbolt. No, this does not. Moving on. Ridiculous. Surface Book 2. This is not really important for this argument other than you can spend less elsewhere to get more. The Surface Book 2 does come with a GTX 1060 and at least an 8th gen i7, so I'll forgive that it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3 because I personally use Thunderbolt 3 most of the time for an external GPU enclosure, but since the Surface Book 2 includes a 1060, GTX 1060, I don't really need an external GPU for that. Let's move on to the coup de grace of Microsoft's disrespect for the consumer. The Surface Studio 2. This is the main event of Microsoft's Apple-esque spite for consumers' requests, requirements, and most importantly, wallets. It starts at $34.99 and goes up to $47.99. So about $4,800. All of them have an i7, which actually is the worst thing about the Studio 2, I'll get to in a second. The price goes up as you add RAM and storage, of course, to 32 gigabytes of RAM and 2 terabytes, respectively. And on the GPU side, up to a GTX 1070, which is also dumb, slightly less dumb, but I'll explain why it's dumb in a moment. Keep in mind, you can spend up to $4,800 for this. We still don't know if at least the most expensive Surface product will have Thunderbolt 3. Microsoft has not said yet whether it has Thunderbolt 3 or not, which leads me to believe that it does not, because why would they announce that their most expensive Surface still doesn't have Thunderbolt 3 right before launch and cripple their pre-order sales? That's probably why it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3, because they know if they say it, it'll hurt. They say it doesn't, it will hurt sales. All right, now to the meat and potatoes. Thunderbolt 3 or not, it still doesn't change the fact that they are charging top dollar up to $4,800 with an earshot of iMac Pro money, which is $5,000, $499,999, for a price that will, that while better than the previous Studio, still uses a previous generation processor, a 7000 series i7, and nearly previous generation GPU, and not even a GTX 1080 Max-Q at that point. It's a 1070. So, that nearly previous generation GPU argument leads me to my main request for Microsoft, just, beyond the inclusion of Thunderbolt 3, which they don't have, even going into 2019. And I'll explain why they don't have Thunderbolt 3 in a second, because it is bafflingly stupid. But back to my plea for Microsoft, my request for Microsoft, which is this. For the next launch, wait for all the current generation components to be made available, within reason, of course. For instance, the last Studio had a 900 series GPU, NVIDIA GPU, while the 1000 series was available. Why did you put an old generation GPU in there when you could have put the current generation? So in the Studio 2's case, you could have waited just a little bit longer. If you would have waited just a little bit longer for NVIDIA to offer up the mobile 2000 series RTX GPUs, It would be much easier for us to swallow $4,800 if you're offering us the latest and greatest technology available, since you're charging so much. So, for the love of God, don't insult the consumer by asking them to spend the most money you possibly can charge them while offering them last generation CPU and last generation GPUs. Don't do that. Just wait. Wait until everything is available. The latest and greatest is available, then offer it to us. Now, listeners, turn on your recorders. Record what I'm about to say, because I will not say this often. So start recording now. If given only the choice between a $4,800 Surface Studio 2 or a base model iMac Pro, Apple iMac Pro, Forniers makes no difference at this price point, $200 more, get the iMac Pro. Did you record that? Do you make a GIF out of that or something like that? Because I'm not saying that again. Here's what you are getting for $200 more on the iMac. You are getting an 8-core, 16-thread desktop class Xeon processor instead of on the Surface Studio 2, a 4-core, 8-thread last generation mobile i7. With the iMac Pro, you're also getting 32 gigabytes of ECC error-correcting RAM. On the GPU side, you're getting a Radeon Pro Vega 56 GPU with 8 gigabytes of VRAM and a 1 terabyte solid-state drive. Now, to appease the PC Master Race, of which I am a member, for around $5,000 that you'd be spending on a Surface Studio 2 or an iMac Pro, build your own freaking PC that completely destroys both of them, probably combined. To end this segment here, on the way out, because we're running out of time, I said I would explain why Microsoft isn't using Thunderbolt 3. And you might be thinking, oh, wow, there's probably a good reason. It's probably not that Microsoft is being so insulting to the consumer or thinks so lowly of us. No, I assure you that it is. I assure you it's because Microsoft is putting a profit margin ahead of what we want. And I think it's going to bite them in the ass in the end. Here's why the Surfaces don't offer Thunderbolt 3, and I'll keep it kind of short. In brief, it's because of their proprietary Surface Connect port. That Surface Connect port uses the precious PCI Express lanes that Thunderbolt 3 could be using. So instead of offering Thunderbolt USB Type-C with Thunderbolt 3 that we all want, they are chewing up those PCI lanes with their proprietary Surface Connect port. Still no word if that port will offer Thunderbolt 3. Probably not. I don't see how it could, but Geek Therapy Radio is open forum, especially here if you're watching on YouTube. There's a comment section. Will the port allow Thunderbolt 3? As of recording this show, I don't know. We can't see it. Microsoft is not telling us. I would imagine it's not, for the reasons I've explained earlier. Plus, the hub is going to have all sorts of different... It's just... I doubt it's going to have Thunderbolt 3. I hope I'm wrong. I hope somebody watches this video in the future and is like, you were wrong about that Thunderbolt 3 on the Surface Connect dock. Believe me, I hope I'm wrong. But I doubt it's going to have it. Hope I'm wrong. That's going to do it for this segment of Geek Therapy Radio. Stick around. There's a quick break coming up here, but we'll be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio for the last segment. So don't go anywhere. Grab a drink or something. Not if you're driving. Just stick around. Stay tuned. Quick 30 seconds here for Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. Geeks and geekettes, I sent you to Audi Central Houston because, simply put, no matter what your budget, Audis are the most geek-out-worthy cars on the road today. So when you go visit Audi Central Houston, tell them that Geek Therapy Radio sent you, and then drool at all the cars that actually are in your budget. You got the A3 to the R8, from the A3 that burns almost no gas to the e-tron that burns zero gas. Audi Central Houston has you covered. AudiCentralHouston.com. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Mental curator Johnny Hemberger. I should state, coming out of that last segment, that I do actually have a Microsoft Surface. I believe it's the second generation. I'm not saying that they aren't great devices. I'm just saying that they are overpriced for omitting what they omit. So My advice with the Surface is buy a previous generation one for half the price. Again, my Surface 2, Surface second generation, I think it's an i5 for sure, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigabyte solid state drive. It's a wonderful device. It's built so well. The cameras in Microsoft Surfaces are amazing for what they are, for a tablet or whatever. They're really good cameras, front and rear. And the sound, the speakers are stunning for the form factor. It's a shame that all laptops, even my MSI GS43 VR, which costs closer to $2,000 than that's just what it costs. $1,500. I got it a couple years ago. The speakers are trash. This is my workhorse computer. This is what I use every single day, and it costs that much, and the speakers are garbage. Garbage Patch Kids speakers. Hashtag Garbage Patch Kids. So the Surface, they do have wonderful speakers. They have wonderful cameras, and the specs inside are great. It's just a shame and stupid that in 2018, when we're all expecting Thunderbolt 3 and USB Type-C across the Surface Pro models, nope, they don't have them. That's unforgivable. And you want how much money for them? That's ridiculous. But wait a year or two, buy a Surface Pro 6 for a few $100. You're golden. You're golden then. Don't be a sucker and be dropping $2,300 for something that is basically crippled because they want to have their proprietary Surface connector chewing up them PCI lanes. That's Microsoft. What are you doing? You're rolling into 2019 with no Thunderbolt 3. Get with the times. How long has Thunderbolt been out now? Get with it. Let's go through some geeky topics, starting with video games, and that apparently there's probably going to be a new Nintendo Switch sometime in 2019. Oh, what? Oh, that's not speculation. I mean, it's not wild speculation. It is technically speculation, but it's not wild to assume that. Nintendo has a very, very rich and detailed history of these, iterative updates. The Game Boy to Game Boy Color, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. Game Boy Advance saw a couple iterative changes from the Game Boy Advance to Game Boy Advance SP, and then the AGS 101 SP that had true backlight. So within the Advance, there was 3 different advances. The Nintendo 3DS, I've lost count of where we're at now with how many times they've changed the 3DS. So the Nintendo Switch will have been out for a couple years at least by the time 2019 rolls around. So of course they're going to do an update. And how do we know that? Is because Wall Street Journal has talked to suppliers as far as component suppliers, and Nintendo has reduced demand for a certain type of LCD panel and increased demand for a certain type of IPS, and that makes you speculate and perhaps that the new Nintendo Switches will have maybe 1080 screens. Maybe there'll be new NVIDIA SoC system on chips that run cooler so that you can run them faster, run them more powerfully, and pump the 1080 out to the screen. It already runs 1080 when you hook it up for some games. Runs 1080 when you hook it up to a TV through the dock. So maybe they're going to put a 1080p panel on it on the handheld so you can run 1080p mobilely. Who knows? What do you think the new Nintendo Switch is? If you're watching on YouTube, comment below what you think is going to be. What's the deal with the new Nintendo Switch? And that's all really I have for Nintendo news, but there's some other stuff. Netflix may soon offer a choose your own adventure type TV show. They've been kind of dabbling with it with kids shows, but remember those choose your own adventure books? Go behind this door, turn to page 167. Turn back around, go to page 134. I think that's kind of neat. Some people are saying it's horrible, what a terrible idea. Oh, chill out. It might be fun. It's probably a gimmick. I can assume that it's not really going to last. But it's a fun gimmick nonetheless. Cool your jets. It's not going to be like, okay, what about this? What if Futurama became turn-based? Didn't they do one episode that was kind of like that? What if a fan favorite like Futurama said, we're coming back more episodes, but now they're going to be choose your own adventure? I guarantee you there wouldn't be so many detractors in that case. What other news is going on? Oh, yeah. Is it LG's new smartwatch? Yeah. LG's new It's called LG Watch W7. It is a smartwatch running the Android OS, and I guess we're keeping this theme. I've picked on Apple. I've picked on Microsoft. Both cases, I think I had an argument. And whether or not you agree with my assessment of Apple earlier this week on Midweek Geek, or you agree with the assessment you just heard in the last segment of Microsoft's middle finger to the consumer, LG has lost their damn minds with the W7 smartwatch. Well, Johnny, how bad could it be? They put physical hands on it. There's physical hands that run around the watch face. The screen is underneath those hands. Those hands don't disappear. So you get a text message, and from the publicity photos they're showing, it's a text, and you can't read 90% of the text because what's blocking it? The hands on the watch face. The ultimate, oh my gosh, can I say this? I'm throwing LG under the short bus, and I don't mean that in a, don't let your mind run wild with that. What I mean is it's because it's a smartwatch and it's a much lesser story. I'm throwing them under the short bus. Because they're charging $450 for it. That's more than an Apple Watch. So, a slightly smaller bus I'm sending after LG to run over. I think there's less wheels on a shorter bus, but LG deserves it. You're going to make a smartwatch that physical hands obscure the smartness. Oh, but you press buttons and the watch hands kind of like, they don't actually really go out of the way. They don't. It's a dumb idea. $450? Are you kidding? In other news, Wi-Fi banding is about to get a little simpler, a lot simpler. Right now we have Wi-Fi, BGN, AC, and what are we doing now? It's a lot. 11.1, like it's very confusing. We're simplifying it now. Wi-Fi branding is about to get a single number. So the latest generation of Wi-Fi is going to be Wi-Fi 6. Last generation is going to be Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 4. So now that when you buy devices, you can see which Wi-Fi it's compatible with. I think that's a smart move until you get to Wi-Fi double digit, and then it's going to get confusing again, as it did. The Nobel Prize winning physicist who coined the phrase God particle died this week at age 96. His name was Leon Lederman, and he pissed off a lot of physicists by calling it the God particle. They didn't really like that because it's physics, and you're not allowed to bring God into it. So they got mad at him. I think that's going to do it for Geek Therapy Radio. Please be good to each other, my geeks. The most important thing is to be good to each other and be good to yourself. Treat yourself. Get a new hobby. Play a new video game. Build a new Lego set. Revisit Star Wars. Just be good to yourselves and be good to each other. I love you all, my geeks. I'll see you next week for more Geek Therapy Radio. And in the final minute, of course, it's going to be Audi Central Houston.com. And also the dealership. Audi Central Houston is the nation's, North America's largest Audi dealership. They have everything there from every budget, whether you want the reasonably priced A3 that gets upwards of 37 miles to the gallon, which is fantastic, all the tech with the fuel efficiency, or 2019, the Audi e-tron, which burns zero gas, zero emissions. You have your choice from Audi Central Houston, and when you go, tell Danny Posey, the GM, that Geek Therapy Radio sent you, and he'll treat you well. He's going to treat you great, even if you don't tell him that Geek Therapy Radio sent you. They'll take really good care of you at Audi Central Houston. And before you go, be sure to check out AudiCentralHouston.com. See you later, geeks.